Ever walk away from a conversation and feel like you were talking to a wall? And
Hmm.
not just any wall, one that's somehow talking back to you without actually, like, listening, you know?
Yeah, I know the feeling.
It seems like meaningful conversations, especially in our digital world, are getting rarer and rarer.
It's a frustration that runs deep, and it's not new either.
Really?
Oh, yeah. This desire for genuine productive communication was at the very heart of Jurgen Habermas's work.
Which is why we're diving into his work today.
He was a fascinating guy, really grappled with how we interact with each other, the power of it, the potential pitfalls.
And we've got a lot to unpack,
Def.
from excerpts of his writing and pasted text
Great stuff.
to some of his most influential works, like The Theory of Communicative Action. We'll even see how his ideas hold up against other great thinkers.
Oh, absolutely.
But buckle up,
Yeah,
because Habermas was thinking decades ahead.
absolutely. Born in 1929, so he lived through some really intense times.
That's true.
The rise of Nazi Germany, where language itself was twisted and manipulated for propaganda.
Oh, yeah.
And then the Cold War, all that suspicion, ideological clashing,
It's a lot.
really shaped his belief in open and honest dialogue.
And that's where communicative action comes in, right?
Yeah.
Can you unpack that a bit more for us? Because it seems like it's more than just politely agreeing to disagree.
Exactly.
Hmm.
Habermas argued that to really engage in communicative action, you have to approach conversations wanting to understand the other person, not just trying to score points or impose your own view,
Oh, yeah.
It's about genuinely trying to find some common ground. And in a world recovering from the horrors of ideological extremism, this was radical.
It makes me think about how we talk to each other today, especially online.
Oh, yeah.
It feels like everyone's just shouting their opinions.
So much noise.
Yeah, and very few people are actually listening.
Right.
Did Habermas see this coming?
He was incredibly prescient in the way he recognized how systems can influence our communication. He was wary of how capitalism, especially through mass media, could manipulate the public sphere, turn citizens into passive consumers instead of active participants shaping their world.
That feels relevant today.
It does, doesn't it?
Yeah. It's like we're surrounded by these distorted versions of what should be spaces for open dialogue.
Right.
Like algorithms designed to keep us clicking and scrolling. They don't exactly encourage thoughtful debate, do they?
No, not really.
Yeah.
And this leads us to one of Habermas's most important ideas, the public sphere.
Okay.
He imagined a space, either physical or metaphorical, where people could come together as equals
Okay.
to discuss and debate important issues free from coercion and manipulation.
It's like a vibrant town square where everyone has a soapbox but is also listening.
Exactly. A place where the best argument wins, not the loudest voice.
It sounds like a pretty lofty goal.
It does.
Did he think it was even achievable?
That's where the ideal speech situation comes in. So imagine, everyone has an equal chance to speak. There are no power imbalances, and the most compelling arguments win, based solely on their merit. No manipulation, no deceit.
It sounds almost utopian.
It does, doesn't it?
Yeah, like something out of a political fantasy novel.
It's true that the ideal speech situation might never perfectly exist in the real world.
Right.
But Habermas saw it as this vital goal,
Okay.
like a North Star guiding us towards more equal and productive conversations.
So how do we take these big ideas about the public sphere, communicative action, the ideal speech situation, and make them relevant to our lives?
Right.
Especially in a world that feels saturated with information, driven by algorithms rather than genuine connection?
That's the million-dollar question, and it's something we'll dig into much deeper as we continue our deep dive. But the key here is understanding that Habermas isn't giving us a set of strict rules.
Okay.
It's more like he's giving us a new lens to see and understand how we interact with the world.
A lens that encourages us to be more mindful, more critical, and more deliberate in how we communicate.
Exactly. Both online and offline.
Right.
It's easy to feel overwhelmed, right? Like our voices are just these tiny drops in this massive ocean of noise.
Yeah, for sure.
But that's where Habermas's ideas can be really empowering.
Okay.
He's reminding us that we're not just passively consuming information.
Right.
We can actually choose to engage differently.
So being more intentional, more mindful about how we communicate in every interaction.
Yes, exactly. Think of it like exercising your communicative action muscles.
Okay.
And you don't have to start with some big debate or anything. It could be as simple as like talking to a family member, someone you disagree with often.
Right.
Instead of trying to win the argument.
Yeah.
Try to actually understand where they're coming from. Ask open-ended questions. Really listen to what they have to say. You might be surprised what you learn.
Yeah. There's that saying, right? Seek first to understand, then to be understood.
Yeah.
I'm definitely guilty of not always following that.
Yeah, me too. Honestly, we all are.
Yeah.
It's a practice, not a destination. And it's not just about our personal relationships either.
Hmm.
Think about how you deal with news information in general.
Okay.
Do you just look for stuff that confirms what you already believe?
Yeah, it's easy to do.
Or do you make an effort to see things from different angles, even ones that might make you uncomfortable at first?
It's hard because there's so much information out there.
Right.
It's hard to know what to trust these days.
It is.
And it's so easy to get stuck in those echo chambers.
Especially online.
Yeah, exactly, online.
You've hit on a really important point, and this is where Habermas's critique of how capitalism influences things is really relevant.
Okay.
He said that when profit is the main reason for sharing information, the quality of that information can really suffer.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And the variety of viewpoints, too.
Right, so how do we break out of that cycle, being bombarded with information that might not be good for us?
It takes conscious effort.
Yeah.
You have to be a more discerning information consumer.
What does that even look like?
Question everything.
Okay.
Question your sources. Think about their funding. Who's paying for this? What are their biases?
Right.
Look for evidence-based reporting and watch out for sensationalism or language that's designed to manipulate your emotions.
Okay.
And remember, even the sources we think are really reliable can have blind spots.
That's true.
So it's always good to see what other perspectives are out there.
So it's like being an information detective or something.
Exactly. And that's really at the heart of what Habermas was talking about.
Okay.
He believed that a healthy democracy needs engaged and informed citizens,
Right.
people who are willing to think critically and have real debates.
Which brings us to social media.
Oh, yeah.
It's an amazing tool for connecting with people and sharing information,
For sure.
but it also seems to amplify misinformation
Yes.
and polarization, all those echo chambers we talked about.
Absolutely.
How does this fit in with what Habermas was saying?
It's like the ultimate double-edged sword of our time.
Yeah.
It's really interesting to think about how Habermas, who was writing long before social media even existed,
Right.
kind of saw some of these pitfalls coming.
What did he see coming? What kind of things?
He recognized that while technology can be empowering and informative,
Right.
it can also be used to manipulate and control people.
Mm.
He was worried that as technology got more advanced,
Yeah.
it could lead to a less engaged, more passive citizenry,
Right.
people who are more vulnerable to manipulation in different ways.
It's ironic because social media often feels like participation.
Right.
We're constantly liking, sharing, commenting.
Right.
But are we really having meaningful conversations? Or are we just stuck in these shallow interactions?
It makes you wonder when we're scrolling through our feeds, are we actually trying to understand what we're reading?
Yeah.
Or are we just looking for stuff that confirms what we already believe? Are we helping to create a more empathetic, understanding world? Or are we just adding to the division and the hostility? Even if we don't mean to.
Those are tough questions.
They are, aren't they?
But important ones, especially now.
Absolutely. And that's why looking at Habermas's work is so valuable today. He doesn't give us easy answers,
Right.
but he does give us a framework to think critically about these challenges
Okay.
and about our own role in building a more just and equal society.
And a big part of that seems to be taking responsibility for how we communicate,
Absolutely.
both offline and in the digital world.
Exactly. You hit the nail on the head. It starts with recognizing how powerful language really is. Habermas said that language isn't just about sharing information.
Right.
It's actually the foundation of our social world.
Wow.
It's how we create meaning, build relationships, shape our whole reality.
So words really do matter.
They do more than we often realize.
Yeah.
Every time we communicate, we're making a choice. Are we building bridges with our words? Or are we putting up walls? Are we trying to understand each other? Or are we trying to create more division?
Yeah. That's a lot of responsibility.
It is. It is.
Yeah.
But it's also really empowering because it means we have a choice. We can actually make a difference.
Okay, so we've talked about the ideal speech situation.
Right.
But how do we bridge the gap between that ideal and, the messiness of real life?
Right.
What are some actual steps we can take to have more productive and meaningful conversations, even if we never reach that perfect ideal? It's like we need a Habermasian toolkit or something.
I like that.
Some practical strategies we can use in our everyday lives
Yeah.
to deal with these communication challenges. Where do we even start?
Well, the good news is you probably already have a lot of the tools.
Okay.
It's just about using them more consciously.
Okay.
And I think a really good place to start is active listening,
Okay.
like really focusing on what the other person is saying,
Right.
not just thinking about what you're going to say back to them.
Oh my gosh, I do that all the time. It's like
Yeah.
my brain is already prepping for a debate before I've even fully understood their point.
It's such a common trap. Our minds are wired for efficiency,
Right.
but sometimes that comes at the expense of really getting someone.
Right.
But the good news is it's something you can practice.
Okay.
Being more present, paying attention to those little nuances in the way people communicate.
Okay, so when it is our turn to speak,
Yeah,
we should aim for clarity and respect, even when we disagree.
exactly. It's about disagreeing without being disagreeable, right? Challenging the idea without attacking the person.
Right, and is that where finding common ground comes in?
I think so.
Okay.
Even in the most heated arguments, there's usually something you can agree on.
Okay.
Some shared value or starting point for a better conversation.
Right.
It might be a tiny little thing,
Yeah.
but often that's all it takes to kind of shift the energy
Right.
from combative to collaborative.
Yeah, like you're reminding each other of your shared humanity. Even when you have different opinions, you're still coming at it from a place of shared experience.
I think that's a great way to put it.
It makes me think about empathy and how crucial it is.
Yeah.
When we can actually try to see the world through someone else's eyes,
Mhm.
it's a lot harder to just dismiss them or write off their opinion.
Absolutely. And that's something Habermas really emphasized.
Okay.
He believed that empathy is essential for communication, especially in a world as diverse and interconnected as ours.
It's about recognizing that our own experiences are limited
Right.
and that seeing different perspectives can help us grow and learn.
Exactly.
So it's not about being right all the time.
No,
It's
no.
about being open to being wrong,
Yeah.
to having our minds changed.
And that can be really tough,
Yeah.
especially in a culture that often values certainty and strong opinions over humility and open-mindedness.
This has been so insightful, but I do have to ask,
Yeah.
what about those times when we try our best,
Yeah.
but we still encounter people who just want to twist things around, you know?
Right.
People who want to manipulate or deceive. How do we use communicative action when someone's not interested in it?
That is the million-dollar question.
Right?
And I don't think there's an easy answer.
Yeah.
Even Habermas knew there would always be people who care more about power than understanding.
So what do we do? Do we just give up?
No, absolutely not.
Yeah.
We can't control other people,
Right.
but we can control ourselves.
Okay.
Even when someone's throwing bad faith arguments at us,
Right.
we can choose to be the better person.
Okay.
Communicate with integrity and respect.
Yeah.
Don't let them drag us down to their level.
So it's about holding on to our own principles, even when it feels like everyone else is losing theirs,
Exactly. It's about being the change you want to see.
and hoping that it catches on.
Right. Even if our efforts seem to be failing in the moment,
Yeah.
they might still be influencing someone else who's watching.
Okay.
We might inspire them to communicate differently, to choose empathy over anger.
Right.
We might not change the other person's mind,
Right.
but we might plant a seed somewhere else.
It's a good reminder that even when our efforts seem small,
Yeah,
they can have a ripple effect.
absolutely. Never underestimate the power of those everyday interactions. Those conversations with family, online exchanges with people who see things differently,
Yeah.
they all add up to a larger culture of communication.
This deep dive into Habermas has been incredible.
It's been fun.
His ideas about communication feel more important now than ever.
For sure.
As we navigate this complex, interconnected world,
Yeah.
his work reminds us that language can divide us or unite us. It can be used to manipulate or to empower.
Well said. If there's one thing I hope our listeners take away from this,
Yeah.
it's that we all have agency. We all have the power to shape the world with our words and our actions.
So true.
Let's use that power to communicate with intention and empathy and a deep respect for human connection.
That is the perfect note to end on. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive into the world of Jurgen Habermas. Until next time, keep those conversations going, and remember, even when it feels like you're talking to a wall, the world is listening.